making the trip down to Dallas. All right. I don't know how much time I have. Do I have till 9:30 or I have till 9:40? There you go. Okay. All right. I'll get right to it then, because I got a lot of stuff in here. I tried to keep it short, but at the same time, I always end up rambling off like I am now and going off on tangents. So, as I said, it's about the conference itself, the tagline: inspiration, innovation, and insights. Well, actually, this will be quite different, because for my presentation, that's exactly what we have here, is basically all three of those. And for my job as conceptual design for Firmenich flavors, as Mark said, I do get to travel around the world and taste and be inspired by all kinds of things that are happening in the streets. I'm collecting content for those three topics and turning them into observations that I can use for new product development for our own teams, but also for our customers' teams. And our customers are all of those CPG manufacturers around the world, whether it's anything to do with something you eat or drink, or whether something that has any kind of a fragrance to it, what have you. So just so you understand, just for where we're coming from, this is the only slide that for me has anything to do with the business I'm actually in necessarily. And this is our flavors and fragrances influence the lives of millions of people around the world. So every single day, every product that you've used from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep has something to do with something that our business has a place in. And because of that, of course, our customers are constantly needing the inspiration for development for something that's going to be, quote unquote, on trend for the future, because they're working on products 18 months in advance at best, and they need to know, okay, well, how am I going to be ready for a consumer, for a product for a consumer in the future who may or may not be ready for it at this time. That being said, we're trying to actually reach the heart of the consumer. These are those invisible elements as part of that, these vectors of emotions. And of course, lastly, we want to blend the art and science to spot the emerging trends and quickly translate these trends into actionable opportunities. That's definitely the most important part. I mean, it's one thing to be tracking all these things, to be observing all this other stuff, but what good is it if it has no relevance to the business you're in or what it is you're doing? Fact of the matter is, the stuff that I'm actually paying attention to can apply to any business. You could be selling elevator parts, or you could be selling cat litter. It doesn't matter to me. The content that I'm working with is global consumers, global. Everybody here has everything to do with everything. The trends are all something that you can pay attention to and perhaps be able to translate back to your business. And I'll take you through some of the processes that we use for development, and I think you'll be able to do the same if you keep your awareness up. So, the creative age. Obviously, consumers use creativity in response to this list of things: relationships, solving problems, etc. And in today's world, the sources of inspiration are more than ever. Who here is creative? Six of you? 6 of you. 6 of you. You came to Dallas for a conference on mobile research, and 6 of you are creative? Seriously, I didn't ask you who was an artist, who was a writer, a painter, or a musician. I said, who's creative? Who here thinks differently than the other people in your office? Okay, 8 of you now. You're getting better. Anybody here wearing jeans to the conference today? Okay, you're a little more creative than the guy next to you. Okay, a little better. Getting the hang of it. Consider yourselves a little more creative. You wouldn't be here, and you wouldn't be in the businesses you were in if you weren't a creative thinking person. In today's world, you can't actually even be in this world anymore at this point if you're not a creative thinker. Everything is influencing everything. You're being inspired and constantly bombarded with all this information. How can you not be creative thinking? I mean, it's just, you can't help it. Something's going to stand up about that. Okay, so just to show you a little chart here, making a difference with your product. What I actually do is actually, I'll probably say, oh, you're a trend guru, trend insights, whatever. You're a trend tracker. You're a trend this. Someone asked me, what's the biggest trend you're tracking right now? What do you think? Somebody asked me that. What do you think the biggest trend I'm tracking right now is? Any clue? Any idea? There's a shot at mobile research, well-being, nature, sustainability, all good trends. Now, the biggest trend I'm tracking right now, it's kind of a joke, tracking trends. Everybody, the biggest trend I'm tracking right now is tracking trends. Everybody is tracking trends. Every magazine, trends this, trends that, everything is all about what the trends are. I don't actually track trends. I have nothing to do with trends in that regard. I actually observe change. That's what I'm doing here. I'm working with this box over here, the one that senses this dotted line around here, observe change, then identify the trend. By observing the change, like you're paying attention to what's going on. Like I said, it's a creative thinking, it's being aware, it's seeing what's going on, in touch with your environment. In this case, that top blue bar is sort of like the process, the way the trend movement actually begins. So you start observing change, paying attention to what's going on, and then as you observe change, then you're able to say, okay, well maybe there's something going on here. You start to identify a trend. Don't get into the question about, is it a trend or is it a fad? Okay, well, this is all about, that's based on time. That's just a time thing. Fad's going to just, come and go, but the trend may live on. It may continue on. It's all about that, so the time. And then as that trend sort of moves into the space, basically you start to create a movement, something's actually going on, well then we've actually moved that time frame a little further along, and eventually it becomes part of our lifestyle. You don't even remember when it was a trend, it just is. Okay, remember in 2001 when the iPod came out. I mean, at that time it was, the beginning of you were observing change, and then all of a sudden it was a trend, and now it's just part of everybody's lifestyle. You can't even get away from that, right? So what did that take? 15 years at best for that to actually be that time period. Below there, you have sort of how a brand might actually come into play in terms of that same time period where the top and the bottom sort of line up vertically, but also move together horizontally. And eventually you're telling the functional piece, you're motivating, and then connecting, and then eventually, again, it's the cultural connection where you have empowerment, and it becomes, again, it's now you're part of the lifestyle, it's part of a cultural connection. So the first box that I'm playing in is business innovation. That's the space I work in, and the businesses that I connect with and the people that I work with in those businesses. And then the last half is up to what happens when it hits the marketplace and how it actually moves along. So this one, I guess you could say is pretty, I've only actually shown this slide once. It's constantly an involvement. I'm constantly working on this. These are the changes I'm observing and have been observing, I guess you can say clocking, I guess you can say, or tracking since 2005. And if you follow the timeline where you go 2005 to 2020 plus, these are some of the topics or the scenarios that I'm working with where I'm sort of connecting that content and building these stories around these things based on what I'm seeing, again, from the street. The bottom part, where it says ancestral heritage, connectivity, all that, those are for our internal purposes. That's a trends box, a trends tool that we work with, TRENZ. That's our own internal tools that we work with. In the timeline, how they just basically, you can see where connectivity and the yellow bar says empowered, those run that whole gamut. They run all the way across. Nature is coming all the way out, experience moving, coming into the, in 2013 or so, moving all the way across. These things are not going away anytime soon. That's why I'm not tracking trends. Trends are going to actually, they're going to have some sort of a lifestyle, not a lifestyle, a time frame to them connected to what's happening in the world, and they could start and stop based on what's being influencing. But these pieces up at the top, this stuff that's going on up here, this is the stuff that's really, for me, these scenarios are really having an impact on the way things are in the world. You can see how, and some of these, again, are a little, these are my notes. This is a little vague in terms of getting into some of the details in here, but this is global content based on my observations of observation change from the streets, et cetera. And you can see where brave went to bold. Bold is now warrior. Warrior is moving into soldier. And I recently added this police. I mean, it gets a little scary, some of this stuff you're paying attention to. If you're paying too close attention to it, you see things that are going on, you can actually really becomes quite a predictive tool in terms of where things are going. And you can see if you got this police piece, this soldier and police thing going on, but these things don't work in isolation. It doesn't also mean that, things aren't also happening with tolerance and reliance, allegiance, and we're moving maybe into a bliss area. And you can see that yellow bar there where it says awakening, which picked up again from around 2007, 2008. We had a new page piece there that was on the awakening, but that's coming back. It has to. If it doesn't, we're doomed, okay? If everything just sort of goes warrior, soldier, police, and then moves into this whole apocalyptic sense, we're screwed, right? I mean, this is not something we want to actually do. So you have to have that pendulum swing. We've got to have a balance to these things that we're paying attention to. So of course, there's an awakening going on as well. I know this sounds a little wacky, but you'll see when I start showing you some of these images that help tell these stories. So here's a case for individuality. And again, these are like, what is it, 8 or 10 pictures from some of my observations that I'm paying attention to when I'm traveling. And this is from Bangkok to Berlin, Boston, and wherever. I'm all over the place, all year round, doing pretty much. I think last year I was in the office for 80 days out of the year. And when I take these pictures, I'm looking for the messages. I'm looking for the insights and building these scenarios around the things that I'm connecting to say, okay, what's the message here? What's the story here? It's not a one-off. It's not, seeing the Love Yourself piece of graffiti down in Miami, but then seeing Everyone Matters in LA and seeing, be in the moment when I was in Copenhagen or, et cetera. You start to put these things together. You say, why am I seeing these messages from different places, but also the same thinking? It's not a one-off. It's not a single thought that's happening by a single person in a single place, but there's a communication that's coming from the streets. The streets are talking. They're giving you these messages. They're telling you things that are happening. And also giving you insights to where things are going. That's why we look at this case. I say we look at the edge as it makes a transition to the mass. But I'll show you that in a little bit. In this case, this was in relevance to color and the pink and the blue that we were seeing a lot of. I mean, in terms of also paying attention to the messages, I'm also looking to see what the colors are. I can pay attention to color forecasting. Trends, if you will, by looking at what's happening in the street just as much as the messages that are coming. And it's usually a very good indicator 18 months to 2 years in advance of what color trends will be for consumers going forward in almost all categories, because of course people like Pantone and WGSN and other color forecasting agencies are looking at the same places I'm looking essentially for this kind of inspiration. Of course, all my connection on looking at pinks and blues that I was seeing around the world, I referred to as balance. Pantone made it Color of the Year for 2016 as Rose Quartz and Serenity Blue, right? Everybody pay attention to that? If you're not, you should. It's good stuff. Revolution. Revolution is, again, this is something that's, it's everywhere. And, you can see that this is, these are messages that are coming out. I mean, even as far as, a Snickers bar down in the corner there, who are you when you're hungry? It's rebellious on that one. But this kind of stuff, like I said, you're connecting it. Now for me, revolution, I'm paying closer attention to, because it's actually, in terms of observing change, it's becoming more and more familiar. And now it's moving into what I'm looking at, as you saw on the chart earlier, into this warrior scenario. And I'm seeing a lot of images from the streets around this idea of warrior. So again, these are not so much the messages in the way of words, but the messages in the way of actually looking at visuals. And then you start to see it also in the press, or in catalogs, or in newspapers, or magazines, or billboards, or packaging. So you start to see all this more information about it. Is it a coincidence? No. In my world, there's no such thing as a coincidence. Take coincidence right off the table. In this day and age, forget about it. With Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr and all the other things that everybody here is already way too aware of, coincidence is not a factor anymore. These things are connected because everybody's paying attention to it the way you are. But how are you bundling it? How are you putting those things together? And you see it show up in the marketplace, in a department store. Fine fragrance products coming out, Warrior, Gillette doing a Warrior piece. Warrior in style, and now you have, everyone in the Army, as I said, is moving into camouflage. The camouflage thing, you start to see it, it's everywhere. Everybody's wearing camouflage these days. I don't see anybody having any camouflage with them today. You see people wearing camouflage even in the winter, which makes no sense, right? I mean, it's like you should be wearing white. It's to make, we're white in the winter. But if you're hiding, if you're wearing camouflage, it's like, oh, there goes a bush, to take it out. So anyway, so but everything and everyone is all about camouflage and being battle ready, and in the army and military, in the clothing. You saw Beyonce at the Super Bowl. It's militant. Everything's going militant. So warrior moving into soldier, soldiers moving right into police at this point. Warrior fitness, right? Warrior fitness, huge trend. Warrior gaming, oh my gosh, what's going on with that? This is not a good thing. I don't find it to be particularly positive, but it is in this world. I mean, this is crazy what it is. I mean, I don't know if you caught it. Now TBS is actually airing the gaming on television. It's now a full-out televised sport on TV now. Warrior food, McDonald's is into it. You've got Cold Warrior, cooking up revolutions, feed the revolution. You've got, warrior this, warrior that. Go to Whole Foods. Whole Foods is full of warrior products. Why is that? Why is everything all about a warrior food now? Is this a coincidence to what's going on? Definitely not. Definitely not. So this is how we put these things together. So basically what you're doing, I'll come over here again and point this out on the chart so you can just follow along. But this does it have a laser on here? Oh, look at that. Okay, so basically what you're doing is you're going from the emotional to the rational and trying to put all this content together and make for product development. So you're going to go, we go out in the street right up here, so the innovation kitchens. So you start in the street, you're paying attention, right? You're observing change. What am I seeing? What am I noticing that's actually now, not what wasn't here before, what's here now, If you're in your own categories, whatever it might be, you go to the store and you say, okay, oh, I know this category. This is a category that I work in that I'm most familiar with, okay? Whatever it is. Like I said, I mentioned whatever industry you work in, right? So you go there. You know that category better than anybody, so you say to yourself, okay, this is new. I've never seen this before. Oh, where's that thing that used to be here that's not here anymore? That's gone. Oh, this thing used to be in this color, now it's in this color. Or it used to have this on it, but now it has this on it instead. You're observing change. You're paying attention to what's going on in that space. You know that industry, you know that category, that product better than anybody else. You're observing change. You can therefore be a trend forecaster because you're saying, I know what's coming, I know what's next, I know how this works. Well, apply that to anything. Apply that now to the street. To take the messages from the street, you can do the same thing in a global consumer level and say, wow, this isn't just happening here in Miami or here in Fort Worth. Nothing's happening here in Fort Worth, by the way. No offense, but I don't know. I walked, 10 miles yesterday. I didn't find anything. I don't know what. A lot of barbecue and boots. That's anyway. So you're looking at the innovation kitchens. You're paying attention to what's going on. You're collecting the photos, a photo reportage. You're putting this material together, and at that point, you're at some information. You're gathering little literature. You're taking the brochure. You go to the rack. You're grabbing a thing. You're ripping out things from magazines. You're in the hotel. Look at the magazines. See what's happening in those spaces. That's when you start to connect the dots. Remember, I said there's no such thing as a coincidence, right? You want to take that out of the mix. So you take coincidence out of the mix. You're connecting the dots, and you start to form a new picture. So that new picture there, that becomes a scenario. For me, that's that grid of content I showed you earlier where it's like it goes from ancestral all the way to police, or you've got awakening, you've got heritage, new, ancestral, et cetera. These are scenarios that we're building to say, okay, there's something going on here. I'm telling a new story. Maybe there's something I can use for later on. So I start to enrich it. And again, eventually for us, it's part of trends. But for you, it might be something that you apply to your business or the way you're connecting it to the business that you need in terms of your category work. Well, that trend doesn't sit by itself. The trend isn't enough for you to work with. You can't just leave the trend alone. You've got to take that trend and then put it into the box of innovation. You've got to make it part of the toolbox. So you've got to include your marketing. You've got to include your consumer insights. For us, it's also we've got to include the ingredients. We've got to include a little, maybe some the consumer insights, the market research. We've got to get the technology involved, et cetera. You can't, then everybody, they all have their own dots. The other people in your organization that you work with, the other members of your team, they've got dots too. They're like saying, oh, hey, I got a little scenario thing that I've been looking at. I've been paying attention to this in my category. I've got this going on. Bring that trend into it, really complete the picture, and have a new concept. Now you've got something going on. Now you've got this observing change piece that became a trend that becomes part of the process. Now you've got a new concept. The concept becomes part of design and development. You get that all together, you create a new product, potentially it creates some growth, and then what happens? It goes back up into the marketplace and in the kitchen, and the next guy comes around and says, I've never seen that before. Where the hell did that come from? How did that get here? Why did those people do that and not this? Why didn't I do that before they did? Because they were paying attention to something that was going on and had some insights to be able to actually be able to actually create a product for the future based on the future without actually having to go there. So this is a little bit of how that might work. You go from the macro vision. For us, it's the trends toolbox, but again, it could be anybody's macro vision that you're connecting. You take that consumer insight, the category expertise, your brand understanding, et cetera. For us, it's technology or a flavor expertise, and eventually you've got a product. Here's some examples. This one's from 2008 to 2012, and this is just a screenshot of screenshots giving you some idea of how we're going from, in this case, it was all about galactic, and there were things going on in outer space. Now, before I just showed you all this warrior stuff, right? In 2008, I was paying attention to all this stuff around astronauts and all this stuff around outer space and UFOs and what was going on with, you know, suborbital travel and all these things were happening around 2008, all the way up to 2012 or so. And you can see where it went into the magazines. It was in the design stage. It was in the fine fragrance world. It made its way, and eventually, all of a sudden, there was an explosion and things going on in pods. Remember, all of a sudden, pods were all about everything. I mean, everything had to come in a pod now. And then, so for us, we turned it into a design concept for some of our customers, and we created these soup pods. So you can see, for us, it's a way to create product around that. From 2011 moving forward, all of a sudden I wasn't seeing astronauts anymore. I wasn't seeing UFOs anymore. All of a sudden everything was moving into a Native American phase. And you saw on the chart in the beginning there, it was like, I called it alternative or alternative. But I was seeing Native American imagery. Again, was seeing astronauts, now I'm seeing Indians. What happened there? Total pendulum swing. We were all the way out, came all the way back. Just a big swing in the pendulum, the same way the color trends went from green to purple, and then from purple to the brown. It goes back and forth. There's just a swing in what's happening there. You've always got that polar opposite thing going on. Just as much as everything's going soldier and police, there's also an awakening happening at the same time with sort of a blissful tolerance happening. So you've got both going on. So, but for us, again, connecting it to smoke signals and food trends, to what was happening in fashion, to the dried meat snacks for us. We connected that to that. All of a sudden, a booming industry. We went from Slim Jims to a craft cult jerky trend that's now $1 billion industry. What the hell happened there? It just came like boom, blew up right out of the space. So we turned this into a concept again for us, became a Kung Pao road mix. It was a jerky blend mix thing that's now actually, now you're seeing people like Epic doing it, and Tonka Bar is doing it, people like this. So again, from the street, fashion, the market segment, to a concept. I'm doing it for flavors and for fragrances. You can be doing it for whatever industry you're in. So this is an inspiration Taurus I came up with earlier this year. And for me, what came from it was this observation, this idea that trends don't drive innovation. That's why I'm not tracking trends. I'm observing change. It's not about the trends. Forget it. Forget trying to track trends. Don't be so concerned about what the trends are. Start paying attention to the change. And where's the change coming from? Trends don't drive innovation. Innovation drives trends, right? Think about it. Think about how much the innovation that you guys are a part of, that the world is making you aware of, when you're observing the change in those categories, and how that is actually the piece that's driving the trend. This is what's I'm kind of visualizing here with this Taurus and this idea that these things are kind of spinning and moving and going, and everything is kind of coming out of that space and making that happen. So the future is present. Anybody here driving an electric car? Nobody. One? Fully electric? Kind of electric? That's it. Oh my gosh. Well, you will be. You will be. It's probably hard, probably can't talk about driving electric cars in Texas when it's pretty much an oil-based state. But the fact of the matter is, if you ever have the opportunity, and you all do have the opportunity, just go to a dealership and try one out. It's like driving a $50,000 golf cart, basically. And it's an amazing experience. It's an amazing experience on a lot of levels, not just because it's silent and that it doesn't use any gasoline, but the fact that it's a connected car. Okay, all cars are being connected, but these are truly connected, and the potential for where they are with that is just amazing when it starts being connected to the roads and everything else. On top of which you can see all car commercials now, most car commercials now are all about the connectivity, right? You see anything about the mileage anymore? Who cares? Nobody gives a shit, right? Who cares about the mileage? I just want to know if I can get Wi-Fi in there or not. I just want to know, does my GPS work in here? Can I really do what I got to do? Can I be silent? Be connected to all these things? That's all that matters. And mileage is just a given now, right? But anyway, so these are electric cars. This is Mercedes. You've got the BMW, the Tata from India, and of course the Tesla. What's interesting about these? There's no dashboards. There's no dashboards. They have flat screens. Okay, you get in the car. Whoosh, it's as clean as your desktop. Slick, very slick, very connected, very today. Looks pretty modern, wouldn't you say? Would you say this looks like the future or it looks like now? Anybody? Looks like now. Looks pretty smart, right? How about this? How's that look? Anybody? Looks pretty old, right? Does it look like your car? Huh? How'd you like to be in the knobs and needles business right now? How'd you like to be the guy that makes the little red needles that do this for a living? I hope nobody does that, or you know anybody. I know, just to let you know, if you are in that business, you might want to rethink going into it. But but these kinds of things are not in the present anymore. You're already seeing the future. You don't need a crystal ball. You don't need me to anybody to point these things out. They're there for you to pay attention to. Here, all this information. Boom, driverless cars. Okay, you've got it. Got some issues, but they'll work that out. Remember? Look. Even remember when an LED watch came out in the 70s? For those of you who are my age or whatever, you'll know. It was like, was it $2,000 for an LED watch? At the time, it was like, in like 6 months, it was 40, and it came in a cereal box. It was like, now you've got driverless cars, autonomous cars, et cetera, the future car. Is your car the fifth place? This leaves you the question, the possibilities of where you can be. Sitting in some of these cars now, it's like flying business class. So ask yourself, what customer segment will emerge in the next 5 years that doesn't exist today? For that matter, make it 3 years. What doesn't exist today? You can figure this out with what you already know. You have the ability to actually make that happen. You can see this. You know this. Okay. What are the assumptions into which your industry operates? What if the opposite were true? What if you didn't need gas to drive your car anymore? What if you could just sit in the back seat and read the newspaper on your way to work and let the car take you to work because it knows how to get there? My car practically knows how to get there anyway. Sometimes when I'm trying to go to the store, my car automatically goes to the office because it thinks every time I get in it, that's where it goes. There's an intuition built into these things that's happening already. So what does it all add up to? Organizations have to change before they are made to. You've got to be open to new insights from within as well as from outside. Get out of the office, come to events like this, get out, go someplace, take a look around. You've got to get away from the desk. Get away from the desk, go outside. Got to get away from outside, go down the street, go across town, go where you've never been before and see something you've never seen before and find out how it's going to be influencing what you're doing. Organizations need to incorporate a new way of learning. Bring that creativity. Remember, you're leaving here. Remember, you came in here, you weren't creative. All of a sudden, 20 minutes later, you're very creative. You're all creative people now. Take that with you. Use it for something you can bring back and leverage it going forward. And be open to new perceptions and innovations now more than ever. You really need to pay attention to these things. It's happening fast and furious, and it's influencing everything that consumers are doing worldwide. It's not a singular thing anymore. It's totally global. Everybody's paying attention to it at the same time, and they're impacting it without any hesitation. There's no pause in what's going on there anymore. You really have to really be on top of this stuff, and it's very easy to do. Just be aware and pay attention. All right? So, thank you very much. By the way, I'm 5 Twitter followers shy of 500. Help me out. Help me out. All right? Thank you very much.
Hey, Michael, stay up here for a little bit. So a couple things. Shame on all of you guys for thinking what I thought, which was that basically this stuff, all these smells and tastes come up with people just sitting around tasting and smelling things all the time. So I was actually quite fascinated at the start of this concept and innovation, even all the way back to just observing change. I did have one quick question. I want you guys to think about some that you might have. So do you guys use any kind of mass methods for observing change? You talked about a lot of individual yourself ways of doing it. So do you have any tips or tricks for people to use, some broader methods for observing change?
Well, I mean, broader methods, only so much as, like I said, really getting out there. I don't have a team. I mean, Firmenich as a company, by a lot of standards, is actually quite small. We're only, I say only because our customers are, 10 times what we are, but we're about 6,000 or 7,000 people worldwide. And in that, there's probably 4 of us who do global trend observation and feeding all the teams, both in perfumery and flavors worldwide. And and we don't have any kind of structured tool like that we use outside of our own observations and our own cameras. We have the ability to, because we're global, we have global customers, it's important to stay mobile and be out in the street with our cameras, phones, and what have you. The best I can say about using any other resources is just the connected world that we all have available to us, and that's social media and the newspaper, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal.
That's good. Hey, I know we're always crunched on time, so let's keep this rolling, though. Any questions? We've got a question down here in the front, and then I think there's a microphone coming right here so that everybody can hear what you're asking.
Given your topic, it seems like a shout out for structural change that hit the world 2 weeks ago would be warranted. My observation would be, for the last couple decades, video games were synonymous with couch potato and a cause of kids not getting exercise. I happened to be in Houston this weekend and was in 3 or 4 public parks, and each time in each park, a majority of the people in the park were playing Pokemon Go. And literally that hit 2 weeks ago and is an unbelievable structural change from my perspective.
Agreed. It's definitely an interesting, as you say, structural change, and something definitely to pay attention to. And I haven't tried it yet. I haven't been home to be able to do so since it's come out, but I did see yesterday, just up the street here, there's a little shop with a sign that says 20% off with your little Pokemon Go connection, whatever. So it's already being connected to the business, if you will. And then on top of that, take that observation, take what you're seeing with that context, and apply it to what it is you're doing. How is that going to have an impact? What if you're now apply it to your toothpaste, or to your sneakers, or to whatever else it is, to your brands, and that awareness. How you get, now you got a bunch of 10-year-olds running around and banging into trees and stuff. How are you gonna make that something that's to a 45-year-old consumer who's looking to buy something that you want to sell, and how do you get them to start running into trees to get your stuff? I mean, they're so anxious to get hold of these things. You've got it a little bit with people, the way, with street fashion in particular, the way people line up or sleep out overnight to get product before anybody else does. It's kind of like that thinking, that mentality. I've got to get it before the next guy gets it. I need to have that. So how do you make that happen in that structural change? But there's definitely something bigger to that story. So it's, again, good observation. Anything else? I'm around for 2 days, so if you have any questions, you want to catch me during the break, that's fine. And so anyway, I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and off to a good start. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, sir.